Good afternoon, Tony Goldstone. It's the afternoon of Sunday, the 28th of September, and just wanted to do a bit of an update because I've not done a YouTube for a while. So wanted to kind of cover a few different topics that are kind of topical, and obviously we've got a budget looming large that's going to be coming in the next month. So just to kind of go through a few of the things that I want to go through. Just before the summer holiday and summer recess for Parliament, there was a question by Luke Evans, who's a GP, an urgent question to the Minister about the unfortunate car crash that is NHS Pensions Administration. So I just wanted to kind of cover some aspects of that. Then, in a related note, wanted to move on to talk about some new tools that I've done and I'm doing, in particular, again, around that interaction with tapering, given that the budget's coming up and this problem hasn't gone away. And then finally, I'll just kind of touch on some of the kind of future directions that hopefully I'll be going in on the kind of modelling side. So if we just start off with administration and kind of a bit of a plea, really, to the powers that be, and a summary of where we are. And the vast majority of members of the NHS pension scheme and employees of the NHS, the 1.5 million active members of the scheme, only generally have to interact with the pension scheme once, and that's when they retire. Obviously, some may interact more if they're kind of coming in and out of the scheme for whatever reason. But unfortunately for higher earners, because of pension tax legislation, we are forced to interact at least on an annual basis. And to say that interaction has become extremely painful, it is a massive underestimate. They're now persistently failing to meet even the statutory deadlines to get paperwork out. So thinking about things like the remedial pension saving statements or RPSSs, but also just routine business as usual pension saving statements. So for example, the 23-24 pension saving statements were meant to be out under statute by last October 2024, and I have still not received mine. I've now asked for it a fifth time in writing, and the most recent response I got back was just complete nonsense, saying, we can't send it out till we've sent out your RPSS. It's like, well, you sent out my RPSS months ago. They're either not reading correspondence or not understanding it, and it's really difficult to feel that there's not been a massive deprioritisation for the administration for higher earners. And, as I said, look, we don't choose this situation of having to comply with tax legislation around the annual allowance. But for us to do our bit, you've got to do your bit, and the scheme have got to really up their game. And, I'm afraid to say, my experience over the last 12 months is I think it's going from bad to worse to terrible, and there really needs to be some urgent intervention to just fix the mess that is NHS Pensions Administration. And I'm not just talking about in England and Wales, because I know there are problems in the devolved nations as well. So on that note, I just want to kind of come across to that urgent question from Luke Evans, who's a GP. I wasn't actually going to go over his question itself, but just some of the debate that was had afterwards. I think I'm going to have to put my headset on to be able to listen to it. So basically, Luke Evans' questions were about the maladministration for pensions taxation, and in particularly around RPSSs and RSSs, and responding to that was the minister. But then there were also several questions about consultants not being able, or senior medics not being able to take on additional work from people like Adrian Ramsey, who's Green, and James Wild, who's a Conservative MP, talking about consultants having to reduce hours, and clearly the main reason that people are having to reduce hours are twofold. One is around pensions administration. So if people don't know their position and it's impossible for them to work out their position, it becomes very risky for them in regards of pension taxation to just do things in the blind and then end up with a 5-figure tax bill. So maladministration is contributing to it, but we also just can't get away from the fact that pensions tapering policy is an absolute mess. So I just wanted to just play you one question and answer from Robbie Moore, who I think is a Conservative MP in Keighley, and just listen to his question, and then we'll go and also listen to his answer as well.
Robbie Moore.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Telegraph reported in April that a quarter of doctors have reduced their overtime to avoid potential 5-figure tax bills. Meanwhile, the NHS capacity has been reduced by about 10% as a result. And this has been something that has been raised on many a door when I've been out and about door knocking across Keighley and Ilkley. So what steps will the government take to rectify this absurd situation which is preventing doctors from working more to reduce waiting lists?
So just before we play the answer, so very clearly what he's talking about and referencing the Telegraph article, and that was an article that BMA Pensions contributed to, they're talking about, one, the car crash of administration, so people don't know what they are, and two, the underlying problem of the tapered annual allowance where people can fall off a cliff and get a massive bill. And this was the answer from the Minister.
Well, again, he highlights yet another mess that we have inherited with regards to the workforce and the party opposite his party's lack of engagement with the workforce properly over the decade in order to resolve the disincentives to making the system work more effectively. Making the system work more efficiently and more effectively is a key part of our 10-year plan. We're very proud of the 10-year plan announced, I think it was only last week, but the days keep rolling through, because as well as the public and the conversation we had really valuable conversations and insights with all staff groups, and I think we had a real spirit of optimism that everyone does want to pull together to make sure that the incentives are right for staff at all levels of the NHS, over 1.5 million of them, to make the NHS fit for the future, and that is what we are focused on. Blake.
So, unless I missed it, there was absolutely nothing there to actually answer the question, which was about what are you doing about pensions maladministration and what are you doing about the underlying problem of pension tapering, which is really worrying and disappointing in equal measure. And we're seeing, I think, lots of deflection about what went on in the previous decade and the previous 14 years. And I absolutely accept that pensions tapering and pension taxation came in not under this current government but the previous government, and they're right about that, but it's for this government to fix the disincentives if they actually want to make serious changes on the waiting lists. And is this a problem that they know about and understand? And absolutely it is. And last December, Wes Streeting's department, the Department of Health, in their evidence to the DDRB, gave a worked example showing the pensions taper cliff edge. So I won't go through the details of this because I've done it before in a previous video, but you can see by just changing this non-pensionable pay in this example from 77,602 to 77,604, so that could be non-pensionable pay could be waiting list initiatives, etc., to bring down those waiting lists. The tax charge, even though income in this example is only gone up by £2, the tax charge has gone from 44,000 to 66,000. So the Department of Health clearly understand this problem, and so now it's a case of what are they going to do about it. Now, obviously, 24-25 is a tax year was a year where lots of people unfortunately are going to have issues with pension taxation because of the partial correction to our massive pay erosion. So I'm not going to use the term pay rise because I prefer to think of it as a partial correction of our huge pay erosion. But that will cause these sorts of issues, unfortunately, for lots of people. But the problem absolutely has not gone away. So what I wanted to show you is just some tools that I'm working on at the moment to try and counter the dual problems of maladministration and not having information to be able to make decisions, and also around the policy, just to demonstrate how ridiculous it is. So this is a tool that I've just written, and it's not going to be just freely available for download, as previously. This is going to be kind of by invite only, so people are going to need to register to get to play with this, but then that they can kind of save things and come back to it and tweak it, etc. So it's going to be a much more powerful tool, and I know from feedback that not everyone is super keen on playing with spreadsheets as I am. So this particular tool is for hospital doctors and GPs who are in the 1995 and the 2015 scheme. Unfortunately, it's just not practicable to do an equivalent, particularly for hospital doctors in the 2008 scheme, because you need much more information. And the idea is you can do it essentially with just two documents. So the document on the top is an example of a current TRS, or total reward statement, or it's called ABS, or annual benefit statement in other nations, and that will give some of the information, and then particularly for members in England, the September payslip is the most important one to be able to estimate what pensionable pay is going to be in the 25-26 tax year. And the reason that people can do that in England is because all the back pay was paid in August pay slips, and so that means that you've got a completed back pay in a previous month, and then this is the first current month that doesn't include back pay, and that can kind of estimate what your ongoing pensionable pay should be in each period for the remaining 6 months of the year. So in this example from this is an officer member, so I think this one is a consultant, and you can see by just going to 2 pages on that document. So if we go to the 2015 section, you can put in the actual pensionable pay, because the 2015 pension uses actual pay rather than whole-time equivalent pay, and you can put in those 3 values. So you can see that those 3 values you just copied across: 133202, 137092 and 159210. And then by going to the 1995 section, that shows work time equivalent pay. Now this is a full-time member, so actually the March 25 pay is the same as the full-time equivalent pay because they're full-time. But if you were not full-time, then those values would be different. And also on that same page where you get the work time equivalent pay, or the pensionable pay, which is stored up here, you've also got the reckonable membership to 24-25, even though it says updated to 22. And the reason why it generally says updated to 22 is because that's when membership of the legacy scheme closed. So although your pension still changes because you still have that active final salary link, how much service you have for most members is fixed at whatever it was at the end of that remedy period. Now, for some members that will have added years, and if you know how many days of service you're buying each calendar year, you can put that in there. If you don't know, if you press show help, you can click this link to get something called an 05 service pay extract in England and Wales, and then you can put in the details from that contract. So start at 32, end at 60, by 4 years, 170 days, and then that's that magic figure there that you can put in there, and then that can also show the position including added years. So that's the information from the past, and then what we need to do is look at the present tax year, and we're looking at the present tax year because that's the year that you could potentially do something about. So we can see we've got the same members September 2025 payslip, and there are two figures that we're looking at. So if we look at the year-to-date section on the bottom, and we can look at the year-to-date pensionable pay. So this is the pensionable pay for the first 6 months of the year, and then you can copy that figure there. So that's 85,281, and then we've got the pay per period. And as I said, because all the back pay has been done already, and then this is a member that's not got any other increments or back pay due in this financial year, that can then estimate what their full-time or part-time pensionable pay is going to be. And if you're less than full-time, you put the number of PAs as a percentage. So 100% there, because this member's full-time, so therefore the actual pay equals whole-time equivalent pay. But for example, if the same member had earned that in, say, 9 sessions, if you change that to 90%, you can see that the actual pay remains 170,582, but then it's been uplifted for whole-time equivalent pay, because that's what the 1995 pension is based on. So we'll just put that back to 100. Now, for other members, for example, members in other nations that haven't got back pay yet, or for people that increment, you've got the option there to put in your best estimate of what you think your actual pay is going to be, and if you're not on a full-time contract, the whole-time equivalent pay, because those two figures wouldn't be the same if you weren't full-time. And on the basis of that, this is able to give you an estimate for what your pension savings are going to be. So we've got a 1995 PIA, we've got a 2015 PIA, and then we've got a combined PIA. So just very quickly going to show what it looks like for a practitioner. So it's a little bit more straightforward because they're both care schemes. Because not everyone has got all of the records up to date in the GP scheme, we're asking again for pensionable earnings in those same 3 years, which may be available for some of them on TRS, or you may need to get from documents that you've submitted to your pensions agency for pensionable earnings up to 2025. And then you are going to need a pension value. So if, for example, you've got a TRS that's up to date to 2024, you can put your pension value on there, and then that will do the equivalent calculations. Alternatively, if you've only got an RPSS or pension savings statements, you can look at the closing value for the relevant year and then divide that by 19. So for example, if you just had an RPSS, you could look at 2023 and then divide the closing value by 19. Or if you had a pension savings statement for 23-24, you could use that closing value, divide by 19, and then put that figure in there as a starting point. Pardon me. So just going back to the officer, and if we go back to the officer member, and we're just going to have a look at this issue of pensions tapering, so kind of coming full circle to Robbie Moore and others' questions about the taper, just to show that it's not gone away. So for this member, this was a year where they'd had quite significant pensionable pay growth. Sorry, you can see that down here. So 7.1%. In the 25-26 tax year, there was a kind of uncharacteristically low September 2024 CPI value of 1.7%. So it's kind of come down to that, and of course now it's kind of double that now, isn't it? And that means that pension growth is assessed for any pension that's gone up above 1.7%. So this member has got very significant pension growth, and you can put in any carry forward that you've got after the RPSS process and after 23-24, no paperwork, and after 24-25, no paperwork. But for other members, they will have worked out, or their accountant will have worked out their 24-25 estimated position. And for lots of people, particularly consultants, in that year, they may have had a tax charge that they need to declare for 24-25, which means that they will have zero carry forward. So as you can see for this example member, they've got a whopping tax charge of 16,108. Now, because their threshold income in this example, let's make that not so ridiculously close. Let's say it was 198. They would get a caution here that they can only earn £2,000 more before being potentially affected by the tapered annual allowance. So if their total taxable pay was 198, their tax charge is 16,108. So let's just see if, for example, they did a weekend of waiting list initiatives, doing some hip replacements or catheters or interventions or clinics, or covering colleagues, etc. And they got £3,000 income. So that 198 becomes 201,000. So we're just keeping an eye on this figure down here, the 16,108, and we can see that 16,108 has gone up to 24,387. An absolute ridiculous situation where just earning, in this example, it was £3,000 more. So after tax, they'd be getting the best part of £1,500, but their tax liability has changed enormously. So what we've added here is some functionality that just kind of shows you a prediction of what would happen if you were to come just the other side of it. So in this example, we had a total pay of 201, and total pay is best worked out, in my opinion, by starting with taxable pay on your payslip. That already excludes pension contributions to the NHS. You don't take them off again. So if you start with that taxable pay figure on your payslip, and then you add in taxable pay from any other source, so property, interest, dividends, private practice, or any other form of taxable income, you add that in to get to your estimated taxable pay. Now, because this is such a dangerous tax cliff, this is a really important figure to get right, and I can tell you this is a figure that I get from my accountant. So we work together to get a really close estimate of that, because it's an important figure to get right. So because we're in September, we are kind of halfway through the tax year as of today's date. It means that potentially you could do something about it. So two things are discussed here. So one, based on the information you provided being correct, if you could decrease 25-26 taxable pay, keeping pensionable pay the same, so we're not talking about reducing pensionable sessions, we're just talking about changing non-pensionable pay. So that might be additional PAs, it might be doing less working list initiatives, etc. So if you can decrease that by £2,000 to get it to 199, and I've chosen 199 to just give a bit of a buffer of £1,000 for bank interest or other things that you may have miscalculated, and then it shows you that will decrease your annual allowance liability by £8,000. So just completely nuts. So if you decrease your pay by £2,000, and that would have given you a loss of income, net of income tax in England at 45% of £1,100, your AA tax charge comes down by 8,279. So that leaves you better off by 7,179. So a complete no-brainer that the sensible thing to do here is try and reduce your non-pensionable pay, because you're close enough to that 200,000 for you still be in a net better position. Now, the other thing you can do is make a private pension contribution. So So again, it says in the alternative, and again based on the information you provided being correct, so this figure in particular is the really important figure to get right. You can increase gross contributions to a private pension, for example a SIP, from 0 to 2,000, and then that brings your threshold income down to 199. Now, I hear people watching YouTube kind of throwing things at the screen saying, what on earth are you contributing towards a pension for? You've already got alleged pension savings with this magical crazy calculation that they do of £95,000. Why on earth would you want to increase that figure by putting 2,000 into a SIP? And the answer is, so remember here, this tax charge is 24,387, because if we do that, we're going to reduce threshold income to 199, because we start off with our total taxable pay, and then we're going to take off a SIP contribution before we get to threshold income. So although this figure is going to go up if I change this to 2,000, then I'll need to reprogram that, because that's just showing the that figure is just showing the NHS PIA. But if we look down here, if we look at total pension savings, so that's that 95,795, and then total pension savings is 97,796, but threshold income has come down to 199, so that's brought that tax charge down to 170,008. So we've got our £60,000 unreduced annual allowance again, rather than the previous position where we only had £41,000, and that led to a £24,000 tax charge. So again, there are some options here if you're only a little bit over to decrease your income or make a SIP payment. But let's make this a little bit more interesting, and let's see if it's quite a bit over that 200,000 threshold for this particular person's circumstances, because it's all based on the amount that this figure is. So if, for example, let's add 20,000 income and make that 221k income, so even for that member they could decrease their non-pensionable pay by £22,000. That's a load of extras. It could be a full year effect of not doing an additional PA, for example, for this particular member for this particular tax year. And you can see that that's brought their tax liability down from 28,000 to 16,000, a decrease of 12779, and that's from post-tax income, remember. So you're still better off by £679 by reducing your non-pensionable pay by 22,000. Absolutely crazy situation to be in. So as I said, this isn't going to be freely available for download. Instead, I'm going to ask people to register interest in what we're doing kind of currently and also in the future. I'll show you what we're doing in the future in just a second. But if you register at this URL or use this QR code, so bit.ly GPFT, Goldstone Pen Fintech, interest, and then put some information in here that tells us a little bit about you, and then we can send you links to relevant tools to you, or whatever future developments we do in the future if you opt into that by filling in this form. So I just want to have a so I'll just see if ESR is so ESR is back up to date, so people will be able to download those relevant documents. That must have just come back on whilst I've been recording this video. But so you just need a September payslip and the latest version of the annual benefit statement or total reward statement. So just in the kind of last 5 or 10 minutes, I'm just going to kind of show you some of the stuff that I'm working on, hopefully for the future. So rather than this being kind of a self-service modeler, looking at potentially trying to launch a professionally authored service where people get all of your information from HMRC and the tax service, etc. and then they're able to produce customized predictions. So I'm just going to show you some charts. This is an example member. This one is also a consultant, not a GP, 55 years old, because this person has also got a partner in the NHS. So this is Joe Bloggs, age 55, and there's also their partner member, Jane Bloggs, who's 52, and I think they're both consultants. And then we can see, for example, just some of the things that we can do. So obviously, generally when people get pension reports, things tend to be kind of, in a fixed nature, looking at, when they said they want to retire, for example. But this allows the member to, for example, have a play with looking at different retirement ages, different options for partial retirement. So in this example, they said they wanted to retire and return and do 90%, but you can have a play with looking at different values and what the impact would be, for example, on pension that you would get at each age, in addition to the 1920 compensation scheme, and then what total pension would look like. So that's pensions. We can also do a look back. So this is the kind of McLeod era. So these are the corrected post-McLeod position, but then also a future-looking option, depending on what the member wanted to do in terms of their retirement options. Then they can see how that would impact on annual allowance charges. The black is 95, the grey is 2015, and these are the two scheme pays loans in each. We can also see what pay and pension looks like in terms of all the relevant thresholds that might be affected. So this is obviously a high earner, so we're kind of teetering with the taper threshold at £200,000 here. So you can see for these examples that we've set here, with retire at 59 and then carry on till 64, that the combined taxable pay is put them above tapering at 80%. So for example, they might want to reduce that so that they don't taper in all of those years, for example. And then, it just means the member can just kind of have a play dynamically with what things look like. And then what pay looks like with all the various options. So again, all of this is dynamic. People can look at different options for retirement, partial retirement, and how much they work. And they can look at net income. Now, all of that would be exactly the same for the partner member, so I won't show you any of that again. So I'll just very quickly just move on to the tax position. So we just move those charts off. Now, obviously, speaking personally, I've not had my 23-24 statement despite asking for it 5 times. I've not had my 24-25 statement, which obviously is not due quite yet under the statutory limits. It should be coming to me in a week or so, but I won't hold my breath. But we can look at the position for both of those for this member, and then also the current 25-26 year. So if I just go down to the 25-26 year, and again, so a little bit like the last member, this real case example is somebody who is very close to the 200k limit. So their threshold income is 193,065. Because they had an increment in this year, their pay's gone up, or partly in this year, their pay's gone up significantly. So you can see they've got a whopping great big charge, 41,000. We can see what the scheme pays impact of that would be. So that would reduce their pension by £1,800 at the ages they want to retire. And so obviously that, these scheme pays impacts will all change if we change the retirement ages. Or that's not switched on there, sorry. But let's just have a quick look at what happens if we change it to tapering. So 193, so if we add £7,000 of income and make that 200,065, we can see that tax charge has gone up from, was it 45 to £61,000. And so this is the real life scenario that some senior doctors will be facing. So this is the question that Robbie Moore was asking in Parliament and didn't really get an answer to. This member is halfway through the tax year. They're already predicted to get to 193, and I can tell you that this member doesn't do any private practice at all. This is just management allowance and 12 PAs. But yet, if they do a few WLIs, they're putting themselves at serious risk of having an extra £20,000 odd tax charge. So as I said, I won't bore you with a partner member, but what I will do is just kind of show you this kind of pretty neat financial planning view. So let's just say, for example, between them, Dr. Joe and Jane Bloggs, let's say they wanted a very generous 10,500, and I appreciate this is two very high earners, and it might not be typical of lots, but this obviously can be customized for whatever people want. And now we can see the combined incomes of both of them in terms of pay. None of them do, neither of these do anything outside the NHS, so there's no light blue there. And then what the effect is of adding in the 95 and 15 pensions and also state pensions. And then for a planning point of view, what the combined net monthly income is. So we can see, for example, if they wanted that net monthly income at 10.5, you can see there's a bit of a shortfall here. So you can kind of tinker with changing people's retirement ages and how that would look like in terms of closing that gap, for example. So as I said, if people want to sign up to express interest in any of the tools kind of going forward, it's going to be done a little bit more kind of on a mailing list basis, rather than just putting everything kind of freely available on the internet, and then move away from spreadsheets and more towards these kind of pretty neat interactive customized tools. You can do so by just going to this URL bit.ly GPFT interest, or scan that QR code and register there. I can't promise on any time scales, but obviously we've still got 6 months left of the tax year for people to make decisions about what to do this tax year. If you're thinking about doing things like a SIP payment, you've obviously got till the end of the tax year, and generally it might be better to do things later on in the tax year when people know, for example, if anything is going to change in the budget that might make you more or less inclined to invest in a SIP. And obviously the estimate that you or your accountant can make of what your income is likely to be will obviously kind of increase in confidence as you get closer towards the end of the tax year. I think the other thing to say is that it's not all going to be about high earners and the 200k limit. Absolutely want to get this looking at the 100k tax threshold as well, which causes big problems, and it's got some of the same solutions. So for example, SIPs, but there are other things you can do. For example, making a gift aid donation can affect that 100k threshold, whereas it doesn't affect the tapering threshold for a charitable donation towards cash, for example. So I hope people sign up, and if you do and you have a play with the tool, please feedback any comments or issues you have with it. And obviously I'll be doing something after the budget on, well, at least on my Twitter, which is Goldstone_Tony. If you're not following me, it's a pretty good place to kind of keep up to date on what's going on with pension taxation. And hopefully I'll see you again shortly. And I think YouTube people say please like and subscribe or comment for whatever reason as well. So feel free to do that. Many thanks.